Hi everyone, I'm Any New Province, and this week we're going to find out if Rhizome Lurcher is possibly Pauper Playable. Rhizome Lurcher is a brand new common from Guilds of Ravnica. It costs 2 green-black for a 2/2 with the Undergrowth ability, which means Rhizome Lurcher enters the battlefield with a number of +1/+1 counters equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Rhizome Lurcher synergizes super well with the graveyard-based card filtering we have access to in green and black. It just so happens that these two colors also have a lot of other cards that care about things happening in the graveyard, which is why I built a deck around Rhizome Lurcher that I'm calling Bin Aggro. Before I get into the deck tech, I just want to let you know that you can like the video or subscribe to the channel down below. I'd seriously appreciate it. It's a great way to let me know you've enjoyed everything, and it really encourages me to keep making great Pauper content. Alright, let's get into Bin Aggro. Rhizome Lurcher is a great finisher that cares about your graveyard, but we have access to another fantastic finisher that cares about the graveyard in Gurmag Angler, so we're running 4. The Gurmfather costs 6 and a black for a 5/5 zombie fish with Delve, which means each card you exile from your graveyard while casting Gurmag Angler pays for one of its generic mana in its mana cost. Delving cards out of your graveyard seems a little bit unintuitive when you're trying to get as many in there as possible to make massive Rhizome Lurchers, but if you time it right and play smart, you can still get a massive Rhizome Lurcher and an early 5/5 out of Gurmag Angler. We're trying to win by attacking, which sometimes can get a little bit difficult if your opponent just has tons of chump blockers. That's why I've included one more evasive delve threat to help us along. This is Sultai Scavenger. It costs 5 and a black for a 3/3 flyer with Delve. Just like Gurmag Angler, we can eat up our graveyard to cast it sooner. I mentioned that we're going to be doing a lot of card filtering using our graveyard. I'm going to break down the cards that we're using to do just that next. First, we have Grapple with the Past, which is awesome when we're trying to get exactly the right creature out of our graveyard at any given time. It costs 1 and a green for an instant that allows you to put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard, then return a creature or land card from your graveyard to your hand. Some decks are going to have a hard time answering a 5/5 Gurmag Angler or an even larger Rhizome Lurcher, so when we get them back with Grapple with the Past, we really put them up against it. They're going to need 2 or 3 more answers to do anything about that creature. We're also running 4 copies of Grisly Salvage, which cost green and a black for an instant that allows you to reveal the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a creature or land card from among them into your hand, put the rest into your graveyard. Grisly Salvage is such a powerful spell. You just get to look at so many cards, and we don't really care about anything going to our graveyard because we can eat it up with our Delve creatures or make our Rhizome Lurchers even bigger. Finally, we have a little bit of raw card advantage in Thorn of the Black Rose, which costs 3 and a black for a 1/3 Death Touch, and when it enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. Being the Monarch means at the beginning of the end step, you draw an extra card, but if someone who isn't the Monarch deals combat damage to you, they become the Monarch. It's like introducing a Howling Mine to the game, but you have to be very careful to protect it. I'm really happy to run 1 copy of Thorn of the Black Rose here. We have a lot of card filtering spells to find it when we need it, and some decks just completely fold to an early Monarch. Next, I'm going to talk about a few cards that help along with those graveyard synergies, but also go really well with our main plan. First, we have Pulse of Murasa. Pulse of Murasa costs 2 and a green for an instant that allows you to return target creature or land card from a graveyard to its owner's hand. You gain 6 life. For starters, 6 life is huge. Those burn and aggressive decks have taken multiple turns to deal that 6 damage to you, and you just get it right back. But also, Pulse of Murasa just lets us reach into our graveyard and get back that massive Rhizome Lurcher we need to close out the game. Next, we have Shambling Shell, which costs 1 green-black for a 3/1 plant zombie. You can sacrifice it to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and it has Dredge 3. Dredge 3 says if you would draw a card, instead you may put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. If you do, return Shambling Shell from your graveyard to your hand. Otherwise, you just draw a card. Shambling Shell's Dredge ability goes a really long way. We need to fill up our graveyard for our Lurchers, our Anglers, and our Scavengers, but also that +1/+1 counter can really matter sometimes when you're trying to push through those last few points of damage. Bin Aggro is at its core an aggressive deck, so we've included a lot of very aggressive creatures to help us start promoting damage to our opponent's face early. That package starts off with Woodlurker Mimic. Woodlurker Mimic costs 1 and a hybrid Golgari mana for a 2/1 shapeshifter. Whenever you cast a spell that's both black and green, Woodlurker Mimic has base power and toughness 4/5 until end of turn and gains Wither until end of turn. We have a ton of multicolored spells in this deck, so Woodlurker Woodlurker Mimic is often going to be attacking for 4 on turn 3, and then every turn after that. Also, Shambling Shell can keep coming back out of your graveyard after you've sacrificed it to put a counter on the Mimic, so you can consistently trigger it whenever you need to. We're also running 4 copies of Putrid Leech, not only because it triggers our Woodlurker Mimic, but because it can start attacking for 4 damage right on turn 3. Putrid Leech costs green, black for a 2/2 zombie leech, and it allows you to pay 2 life to give it +2/+2 until end of turn. You can only activate this ability once each turn. We're trying to trigger our Woodlurker Mimics as often as possible, so I've included one more green-black spell to do just that. Also, this goes along pretty well with our aggressive plan. I'm talking about Consume Strength. It costs 1 green-black for an instant that gives target creature +2/+2 until end of turn, and it gives another target creature -2/-2 until end of turn. Finally, we have a little bit of interaction that comes in the form of creatures that we can recur with our Grapple with the Past or Pulse of Murasa. We have 3 copies of Fume Spitter, which costs 1 black mana for a 1/1 that you can sacrifice to put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. This is awesome for picking those fairies out of the sky or killing an important elf before your opponent has time to build their board. Our last non-land card is Crypt Rats, which costs 2 and a black for a 1/1. You can pay X to have Crypt Rats deal X damage to each creature and each player. You can only spend black mana to pay for X. It's a little risky to play Crypt Rats in any deck that isn't mono black. However, if we can sacrifice Crypt Rats to just deal 2 or 3 damage to everything, that could result in a massive board wipe, and we can keep buying it back from our graveyard to wipe the board over and over again. Alright, let's have a look at this mana base. First, we have 4 copies of Evolving Wilds. Great fetches, they go to the graveyard for our delve creatures, and they get us a little bit more black mana for Crypt Rats. We even have an extra copy in Terramorphic Expanse. It's the same as Evolving Wilds, but we want a lot of these sacrifice lands to fill up our bin. Because we're only running 21 lands and we want to cast 4 drops, we have 1 copy of Golgari Rot Farm, your Karoo in green and black. Our last non-basic lands are 4 copies of Jungle Hollow. They enter the battlefield tapped and gain you a life. When they're untapped, you can tap them for green or black. For our basics, we have 6 forests and 6 swamps. We want a lot of untapped mana so that we can hit our 2 drops on time and start attacking our opponent for 4. Alright, let's have a look at this sideboard. First, we have 2 copies of Duress for pulling troublesome cards out of our opponent's hand. We have 2 copies of Moment's Peace that we can mill over with Grizzly Salvage and then use if our opponent is going in on 1 attack. We have 2 Doomblades for instant speed removal. Maybe we'll hit a ninja with them. We have 2 copies of Mephitic Vapors, the brand new Wrath Against X ones that lets you surveil too, which is pretty sweet. We have 2 copies of Nod of the Bone for gaining life against burn decks. We're going to have a lot of creature cards in the bin. We have a copy of Pulse of Murasa for even more life gain and for buying back a creature we may need in those matchups where our opponents are very interactive. We have 1 more copy of Thorn of the Black Rose when we really just have to crumple an opponent who isn't good against the Monarch ability. We have 1 copy of Wickerburrow Elder for killing off all of our opponent's enchantments and artifacts. And finally, we have 2 copies of Serene Heart for destroying all those auras on those troublesome boggles or heroic creatures. And there you have it, bin aggro. We're going to take this deck into a league at twitch.tv/AnyNewProvince this Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Atlantic time. We're there every Tuesday night playing Possibly Pauper Playable decks. Before I go, I just want to remind you that you can like the video or subscribe to the channel down below. I'd seriously appreciate it. It's a great way to let me know you've enjoyed everything, and it really encourages me to keep making great Pauper content. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this deck tech, and hopefully I'll see you on Tuesday night.